What's going on, everyone? So here we are in the wonderful world of Wonder Calibration Disc. To the left we have the Hisense H9F. To the right we have the Sony X900E. Now, a lot of people have been asking me, which one is better? What TV do you prefer? What's the deal? And I'll just tell you like this. When going into comparisons, it's important to understand each TV will have their strength and weaknesses, so it's almost impossible to give a definitive answer as to which one is better, because it really pertains to your preference. Some people might like more detail, others might like more vibrancy of color. So to just render a pure verdict on something is difficult, especially when TVs are close to one another. That being said, if you like vibrancy of color, if you like brightness, if you like contrast, the Sony X900E will not be the winner in that category. That goes to the Hisense H9F. However, if you like tone mapping, and if you like a natural color paletry where you have multiple shades of color that are natural in faces, especially Sony has some of the best skin tones around, then of course Sony's going to be the better option. You know, I think when it comes to these things, it really just comes down to tomato, tomato. I mean, what works for you won't work for the next person, so you have to look at your content. How are you watching TV? What do you watch on your TV? How are you video gaming? And most importantly, don't get caught up into a lot of the marketing stuff. It is really hard not to. I know, like, even the brand new TCL with their 25,000 LEDs, I mean, that might be great and all, but maybe a Vizio P-Series Quantum with 200 zones of local dimming might be good enough for you. If all you're looking for are deep inky blacks, maybe you don't need near self-emissive level of black levels. I mean, it's up to the user, of course, but that's my point. My point is, don't let manufacturers and companies and, you know, influencers on YouTube think for you. That's a really hard thing to do, especially because, as I was saying, TVs are very close. I mean, I can go and talk about the back and forth all day with these particular TVs. It comes down to a simple thing like this. The Hisense to the left is more vivid, more vibrant, and again, you're going to have better brightness overall, but then Sony has a better tone mapping system with more natural color, so they are pretty well spec'd going up against one another in that, you know, Sony with their brightness, while it's not as bright as the Hisense, they pick where they put the brightness, and they choose a good, appropriate balance, and I think it works well for Sony. Also, the tonality of the environment, I think Sony does a great job with rendering stuff like that. A lot of people accuse me of having a love affair with my Sony X900E, but in reality, it really is just that good of a TV. I said in 2017, this was a sleeping giant, and I'm saying it now. This TV is absolutely incredible. I honestly don't know very many downsides to the Sony X900E because everything that I watch on it is pretty impressive. I mean, whether it's 4K, 1080, whatever, it's great. And that again, not to say that the Hisense is bad, but now a lot of people are asking, how does Hisense hold up against high-end picture processing? Sharpness is great on Hisense. I think that's one of the things you'll pick up on immediately. However, they do a subpar, not too subpar, but compared to Sony most definitely, and the X1 processing chip on the Sony X900E, subpar level of reducing noise. And the noise reduction is not as intense. Not to say that it's a grainy mess like the Sony X930E or anything like that, but it does have some grain to it that you would notice. So that's just something to think about. All in all, though, I think I really like the look of the Hisense personally. From a personal perspective, I find myself favoring it more. It's more vivid, it's brighter, it's got deep black. I mean, contrast is through the roof. Even though it doesn't have the better skin tones like Sony has, you can go ahead and calibrate all that stuff and use the Sony as a reference if you would like to get that more natural skin tonality. But for me, I think ultimately it comes down to what I think I like, and I think that's my content. But the question is, how do you watch TV? And instead of having somebody else answer that for you, I think videos like this can only guide you, but it's ultimately up to you. Like, for example, if you look at the Hisense to the left, you're going to notice the trees are just so much more green. You're going to notice so much more detail than Sony, which, again, has a more natural, softer color paletry, but that doesn't mean that they're inaccurate or anything like that. They do what they do. And then when you look at the ground, Sony has the more warmth, and more, I guess, intense ground color. The warmth is just incredible, right? But Hisense is not too far behind. So, you know, it's credit to the budget brand, most definitely, that they can hold their own against something like a Sony when you see, again, in images like this, where Sony with the tone mapping is great, but if you look at the ground, the shadow detail of the Hisense is absolutely impeccable. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to reach down here, I'm going to try to plug in my controller here so it doesn't die, because we do have a little battery here. But, I mean, my point being, looking at these differences right now, right? Like, let's say you had the Sony X900E to the right, and let's say this TV was $34.99, and the Hisense to the left is $8.99. Would you really pay $34.99 just to have slightly less grain, maybe a little more sharpness in some areas on occasion, per scene to scene? It's changing, it's very, like, you know, very niche, right? It happens so fast, and it's on such a dynamic basis that would you really pay that extra markup for that? And that's something you can answer. Me personally, I mean, as long as you're close, right? As long as you're 90% of the way there, good enough, right? And I think that's really where the conversation for most families go towards. I mean, for me personally, looking at this image is dramatic on the Hisense because I see more vibrancy. So for me, I know the Hisense was $899 plus tax. After taxes, I paid $963 for this. My Sony X900E was originally my Sony X930D. That high-end TV had horrible quality control where the panel started separating from the actual TV. And I had to get a replacement through Sony, and I ended up with the 900E. Not even the 930D. They downgraded, or the 930E. They downgraded me to a 900E. So, needless to say, I thought that was a downgrade, but I mean, the picture quality has been amazing. But that being said, this TV started off being very expensive, right? And I can't say that it was worth the price of that. When looking at an $899 TV from Hisense, do so very well. I mean, it's just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And I think if you've got $899 and, you know, you got a little extra from tax or to put towards the tax, I mean, I think this is a good move for you. Yeah, sure, you're not going to have Sony processing. You're not going to have, you know, Bixby from Samsung or LG's WebOS, but do you really need all that? That's the question. And especially now in today's market where things are geared more towards you must update all the time, we'll hold back on a couple of features to try to give it an excuse for you to update your TV. I'm noticing that happen more and more with the top brands, where Sony will be like, oh, we'll give you Dolby Vision in summer, just wait till summer. And you know, you're sitting waiting for months and months for this one update. And then you get the update, and it's after all the mainstream reviews came out, right? And then now your TV's messed up. Now your blooming is more noticeable, or you have more issues in one area, or colors don't look quite as popping. Contrast is weaker than it was before. And this is the stuff that I notice from a professional calibration standpoint and just being in the business as long as I have been, where I'm seeing these kinds of things. Now, right now, as I sit on this particular image, the Hisense to the left is sharper, more detailed, has a more natural color paletry that actually looks like a fall season is kind of, maybe even spring coming out of winter. You know, it really looks like there's something happening here where there's a lot of color in a different shade of green, where Sony is kind of one flat color. And again, that's because this particular Sony model doesn't have that color space management system to give accurate colors on that level. So again, $899, you have a TV that has sharper imagery than an X1 4K HDR processor from a top brand like Sony. So even though it's a budget name like Hisense, it's still doing very, very well. Now, fun fact, did you know that Hisense is actually Sharp? Sharp has been around for years. I know a lot of you guys know the Sharp Aquos brand, and a lot of those people who had those TVs, very happy with them. Well, Hisense, again, being Sharp, more of the same. They just hide behind their Chinese name instead of the name they acquired from Sharp. But I tell you right now, it's the same beautiful picture quality, and they do a great job. I have no quarrels with this image quality. So honestly, it's tomato for me. Like, I wouldn't pay the extra markup for a Sony X950G. For those of you guys that are out there wondering, is the Sony X950G really worth the markup? I would say no. The reason being is the Sony X950G and previous comparisons lost to the Sony X900E to the right, where the Sony X950G did have better upscaling as far as sharpness and tone mapping, it did ultimately lose to natural tonalities, color paletry, and color coverage, and all that other stuff. And the Hisense has taken that to another level, and you're not even paying $1,000 to get that. You're under $1,000. And while not substantially under $1,000, coming in at $963 on my end, that's still under $1,000. I didn't have to even break, two $500 stacks. I mean, that's great for me. I don't want to have to pay that much for a TV. And I think that especially at the rate that technology is growing, you don't want to invest that much in it anyway, because a lot's happening, right? We have mini LED, we have micro LED on the horizon, we have rumored Samsung OLEDs that are going to have quantum dots. So, I mean, really, a lot of things are changing. But ultimately, between the Hisense H9F and the Sony X900E, I would give the win to the Hisense, because not only is Hisense targeting a lower price point, but it's also doing so with less status to its name. It's a budget brand only by name, because I'm telling you, when you get to the picture quality, it's far more impressive than what all of the mainstream guys will tell you. And I get really angry when I watch Vincent Teo or Caleb from Digital Trends rant about how great all of these mainstream TVs are, and then you get them yourself and you calibrate it yourself, and it's so far off the mark from what they promised that these TVs would be like with their quotation mark professional reviews. And then it hits you. The reason they're professional reviewers is because they need to run a business of getting more TVs in and more TVs out. It's all about telling you how awesome everything is and not telling you the dirty secrets that the TV has. But that doesn't help people like you who are watching this video right now looking for real honesty. So I appreciate you guys for watching. But at the same point in time, it is frustrating because I shouldn't have to hold anybody's hand when they do a review. They should just give the honest information, and sadly, that doesn't happen. I'm going to tell you right now, don't trust mainstream reviews, don't trust mainstream retailers like Walmart or BestBuy.com, because what they're doing is, even on Walmart and Best Buy, pulling their reviews from the website of the manufacturer to give, again, favor to TV so that they sell more. We're in the age of social media being used as a tool to manipulate so many people on such a large scale, to think that, you know what, that Hisense is for broke, poor college kids, for dumb people who didn't apply themselves in school and don't have the money to get themselves a proper man or proper woman's TV. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Here you see it going up against the Sony X900E. A TV at one point was well over $1,000, which is well above the price point of the Hisense. And I'm telling you right now, that, I mean, really, there is a massive difference in the image quality that you are seeing between the two. So my point is this: don't spend for the sake of name or status. I know there's one of you guys in the community that, you have a wife that won't let you spend anything on a TV that's not Sony. And I really do feel bad for you, because that does limit your chances of getting a good TV that way. Brand loyalty gets us nowhere, guys. You can't be loyal to a company or to an entity. You have to look at things fairly. And if we look at it fairly, for the same exact price point and all the things considered, the Hisense H9F is delivering on every single front. And I have to say, if you wanted to choose between these two TVs, Sony X900E, Hisense H9F, yes, it's going to come down to personal preference. But ultimately for me, I'm going to give the win to Hisense, because they come out with a statement that says everybody can get awesome picture quality. And honestly, guys, this is flagship level. This isn't entry level or mid-range level performance. And I haven't heard a single reviewer say that, and it's a damn shame. But I'll be the first person to tell you that in the comparison. Looking at them side by side, dude, on my end, in person, it's damn impressive. Now, do I love my Sony X900E? Of course I do. It's still one of the best TVs I ever owned. It's fantastic. Motion's brilliant. But I tell you what, the Hisense is exceeding the motion of the Sony. And I didn't expect that. I really, truly didn't. So, hopefully by giving you guys this information, I know this is a long video, but hopefully this is going to clear up a lot of things and kind of educate you into making smarter buying decisions, and not just going with, the most popular, most trendy thing out there, but going for something that actually helps you out. Now, if you need specific help on things that, like, which do I pick and why and all that stuff, I can help you guys with that. But ultimately, for my personal preference between the two TVs, I think Sony has natural colors, but ultimately, I give the win to Hisense because Hisense is doing a really good job, especially for the cost to value ratio that they give the consumer. It's just impeccable and quite frankly unbeatable at this point. Though, not gonna lie, Sony looks better in this particular shot of landscape. So again, as I was mentioning at the beginning, it does go down to how you watch, what you're using, how you're consuming. It's never as black and white as, you know what, I like Sony because it's Sony, or I like Hisense because it's Hisense. It really does depend. Thanks for watching the #1 brand in honesty. I hope you guys enjoyed, and until the next video, I'll see you guys later.